ladies and gentlemen, fight fans all around the world, let's talk some boxing. So, yes, we're going to talk about the best ever again. Yes, I am doing the Floyd Mayweather TBE arguments. I'm in round 9. But I want to take the time out to show you guys clear-cuttedly how easily you can determine who the best ever is. It's very simple, actually. But first and foremost, some people don't even believe you should use such a term, the best ever boxer. There's no one boxer in history, according to them, that is the best ever. And some of them believe that you shouldn't even compare boxing eras because it was completely different times. To that I say this. You compare boxers in a given era from different divisions, don't you? But they will never ever fight one another, ever. A heavyweight will never ever fight a featherweight, nor featherweights. And you know this, but yet you have pound for pound lists. So if you can have pound for pound lists, ranking fighters above each other and they're never going to face one another, why can't you compare boxers from different eras? Why? Give me a reason. Okay, so my argument's fair. So let's talk TBE. The best ever. The best ever is not the greatest. And this is very easy to express to people. And you look at Muhammad Ali, who proclaimed himself the greatest of all time. And hands down, Muhammad Ali is the greatest of all time, at least up to this present moment. Because if you say Muhammad Ali and somebody doesn't even know boxing, they're going to know who Muhammad Ali is. Alright? He's a pop icon. He is a pop culture icon. Period. He is the greatest boxer ever to this time. Surpasses Floyd Mayweather. And Floyd Mayweather is currently very, 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 very well known. But Muhammad Ali, you say Muhammad Ali and nobody knows anything about boxing. They don't speak English, nothing. They're going to know who that is. Alright? Nobody's going to know about, and not everybody knows about Sugar Ray Robinson on the other hand. Sugar Ray Robinson, boxers know about him. People in the boxing fraternity and fans know about Sugar Ray Robinson. And most people in the boxing fraternity know about the mythos of Sugar Ray Robinson. If you ask them, have they ever seen any Sugar Ray Robinson film or fights or footage? Most of them will say no. Which is interesting. But, nonetheless, Sugar Ray Robinson is the one that inspired pound for pound listings. Okay? He's the one that started that. Okay? So you have Sugar Ray Robinson, who a substantial amount of the boxing community and people in boxing think is the best boxer that ever walked the earth so far. And then you have Muhammad Ali, who is called himself the greatest, and I truly believe is the greatest, period. And then we have Floyd Mayweather Jr., who calls himself the best ever, and many people dispute that he is the best ever. But when you look at his track record, when you look at his fights, when you look at his, the assortment, the all-around assortment of things that he not only accomplished, but also the gifting and the skills and the smarts that he has, you definitely have to put him in the conversation, right? Now, having said all of that, there is a very simple way to discern who the best ever is. You can talk about punching power. When they talk about Sugar Ray Robinson, they think of him as the complete boxer. He had the power. He had the inside game. He had the outside game. He had the mid-range game. He had the defense. He had the slickness. He boxed and move, or he can walk you down. He had the finishing touch. So this is why they consider Sugar Ray Robinson the most complete fighter. They say Floyd Mayweather, he does not have that killer instinct. He doesn't go for the kill. We know he's capable of doing it, but he doesn't do it. Ali had the killer instinct, but he's not considered a guy with the full all-round game. He doesn't have the inside game, but he has an outside game, and some of his defense is suspect. But nonetheless, he had great footwork, he had great energy, he was really well conditioned in his prime especially. Now, having said that, we know these guys, these three gentlemen are legends. We know they are all-time greats. The question, how do we discern which one of them is the best ever? When we talk about all three of them, who's the best ever? And I easily can answer that question. If you look at their entire careers, from beginning to end, which one of them stayed at the top level throughout their careers? Which one? Come on. Come on. Show of hands, please. Which one? Okay, for those of you who don't know who it is, let's go through their careers, shall we? So, let's start with Muhammad Ali, the greatest. And literally, his alias is the greatest. All right. So, Muhammad Ali, okay, he began his career at the age... Muhammad Ali began his career at the age of 22. When he was 22 years of age, he went into the pro game. Okay? He went into the pro game back in 1960. And he finished his career in 1981. That's 21 years. Okay? Now, we're going to look at when he reached his pinnacle. And when you reach your pinnacle, when you become the undisputed heavyweight champion of the world, right? He beat Sonny Liston in 1964 to become the undisputed heavyweight champion of the world. First of all, Muhammad Ali was saying he was the greatest before he even met Sonny Liston. Okay? he had no profile, no nothing to back that up. That's just something he believed. Right? When he beat Sonny Liston, he went on a whole other level of rhetoric. And he was like, I am the greatest. And so on. It's amazing. You guys need to go watch the footage. It's just amazing. All right. So people were so shocked by that they had Sonny Liston rematch him. And in the rematch, he knocked out Sonny Liston in the first round. That's all I got to say about that. But here's the most important thing, because I enjoy talking about these things. The important thing is that when you look in 1964, who's the man in heavyweight division? It's Muhammad Ali. Whether you think a pound for pound list or not is not important right now. Let's just talk about divisions and what they did. He was the top of his division in 1964. He was at the top of his game. You can't get any higher than that. Right? You're heavyweight champion of the world, that's it. There's nothing else to it. Right? So he's at the top. Now he proves himself by defending his title. And he will go on to defend his title successfully. But then Muhammad Ali had to leave boxing because of the draft. And he decided to take a principled stand of not being a part of the war through his religious persuasions and beliefs. Okay? And they cut him from boxing for 3 years. But he came back. He came back to boxing. Now, he should have had his titles, but in the meantime, while he was gone and they took his titles from him, Joe Frazier became the undisputed heavyweight champion of the world. So Ali came back in 1971 and faced Joe Frazier after a couple fights. And he lost. He lost. So he wasn't the number one guy in 1971. That was now Joe Frazier. Okay? So he wasn't the number one guy throughout his career. Right? Wasn't at the top of his game throughout his career. Let's move on. He would work his way back to the top. It would take him from 1971 all the way up to 1974 before he gets a second shot at the title. In the process, losing to Ken Norton, but that's another story for another day. That's on the way up. Broke his jaw, all kind of crazy things. It was just nuts. Faces George Foreman in a fight that's unlikely for him to win, according to most people. Most people believe that. All right? In retrospect, we're thinking, look at that. Ali was too smart for George. Well, kind of. So anyway, at the end of the day, he faced George Foreman. He retained the world heavyweight title of the world. This is the second time he had the heavyweight title of the world. Undisputed. He's at the top of the game again. Right? And he would continue to successfully defend that title from 1974 all the way up to 1978. 4 straight years. Before succumbing to the most unlikely of people, the least experienced, a guy with only 7 fights, Leon Spinks. Well, Leon Spinks is smaller than him. You know, he's quicker than him. And so maybe that's the reason, I don't know. Or it could be that he had Georgie Benton in his corner. Maybe that's the difference. Georgie Benton, a very seasoned boxer who became trainer. Anyway, whatever it was, Leon Spinks beat him by split decision. Unseemly. Couldn't believe it. But In a return fight, he beats Leon Spinks and retains the heavyweight championship of the world. Not the undisputed this time, but the WBA version. A third time. A third time, folks. Unheard of. Never been done before. Muhammad Ali did that. So he was not at the top of the game for a brief moment in time in the year, and then he got back his title. And 2 years later, he faced Larry Holmes, who would become one of the all-time legendary heavyweight fighters himself, though he lived in the shadow of Muhammad Ali, who would not only beat him, but cause his corner to not let him come out in the 11th round. And so Muhammad Ali, for the first time in his career, retired. This was in 1980. And then he would go on to lose to Trevor Berg in 1981. Now, Muhammad Ali, at the age of 39, was not at the top of boxing at the end of his career. In fact, when he was 38 years of age, remember this, when he was 38 years of age, for the final and last time, he would be the WBC World Heavyweight Champion until October the 2nd of 1980, when he lost that title to Larry Holmes. Okay? And that was that. So, there you go. Now, remember, he was 38 years of age when he again fell from the top of his division and never returned. Muhammad Ali had a career. He was 39 years of age when he finished his career. He did not finish on top. And 2, he fell from the top of his career at the age of 38. Remember that. So when you look at the end of Muhammad Ali's career in 1980, at the end of that year, Larry Holmes was now the undisputed heavyweight champion of the world, lineal champion. Muhammad Ali was now not even in the top 10 contenders anymore. Sugar Ray Robinson. Sugar Ray Robinson was, he debuted in 1940. He was 19 years of age when he became a professional boxer. By the way, I told you what age Muhammad Ali was when he became a professional boxer, which was 22. He became the world heavyweight champion of the world at the age of 24. That was 2 years after he had debuted. Very important to remember. With Sugar Ray Robinson, he began boxing at the age of 19, but it would take him 6 years before he would be able to fight for the heavyweight, for the welterweight championship of the world. In the process of doing so, he lost to Jake LaMotta, but that's sort of irrelevant because he didn't reach the top of the sport yet. So he reached the top of the sport in his 76th fight. He faced Tommy Bell and became the undisputed welterweight champion of the world. All right? He was 25 years of age when that happened. So 6 years it took him to become world welterweight champion, which is not a big deal really when you stop and think about it. Some people go 8 years, 10 years. Kell Brook was 10 years, I think. So, you know, in that process anyway, he got his opportunity, unlike some other black fighters who did not get that opportunity. One of them is Charlie Burley. Didn't get one. He didn't get a shot with Sugar Ray Robinson. He didn't get a shot with Henry Armstrong. It's just what it is. Different times, right? So anyway, let's move on. So, after becoming the welterweight champion in 1946, at the age of 25, he would go on to just, you know, every championship fight he had, he would win it. So it was just really good. And in the meantime, too, he would also be doing middleweight fights. And he fought some really good fighters. Now, he would go up to the middleweight division, and he would win the middleweight title against Jake LaMotta, who had some time before beaten him, right? This was in 1951. And then he would go on, and by the way, note, Jake LaMotta at the time in 1951 was, of course, the lineal champion. So he was the man at middleweight. Okay, so a top guy he fought and he beat. However, in that same year, 1951, he would lose the title 5 months later to Randy Turpin. In his first defense of the title, he loses it to Randy Turpin. Okay, he would rematch Randy Turpin, beat him, but Randy Turpin by that time had also lost the title to Bobo Olson. Bobo Olson, who was a bad boy. He was a bad boy. He's legendary, I'm telling you now. The only person he didn't beat was Sugar Ray Robinson. Bobo Olson would have the world middleweight title, and Sugar Ray Robinson would beat him and regain the world middleweight title a second time. All right, he had been undefeated at welterweight in terms of championship fights. He moved up to middleweight, lost the middleweight title, gained it back, and he had a successful defense of it against Rocky Graciano. Sorry, did I say Marciano? I didn't mean that. And after his successful defense of that against Rocky Graciano, he went up in weight one more time to light heavyweight to face Joey Maxim. And let me tell you the truth about the story, because people watch footage of it, they say all kinds of things. He was tired because of the heat. It wasn't the heat. While the referee was out because of the heat, Joey Maxim wasn't out because of the heat. Think about this now. It was Sugar Ray Robinson's conditioning and the fact that he allowed Joey Maxim to land body punches on him throughout the fight. Yeah, Joey Maxim was losing rounds, but he was investing in the body. And then when he got his opportunity to whoop Sugar Ray Robinson's butt, he started beating Sugar Ray Robinson up in the 12th, the 11th, I think the 10th, 11th, and 12th rounds. He started really putting the beating on him because Sugar Ray Robinson was fading. And he's small. You can't be 157 pounds going up against a 173 pounder, and you don't expect not to feel the effects of punches from a 173 pounder. I don't care how weak that 173 pounder is. That's a serious difference in weight. Anyway, Sugar Ray Robinson, got the beat down from Joey Maxim, and so he didn't come out for round 14. That's what happened. That's the truth of the story. Okay, because Joey Maxim wasn't fainting off because of the heat. It was Sugar Ray Robinson. Anyway, after that, he retired from boxing for 3 years, comes back, faces Ralph Jones, loses to Ralph Jones because Ralph Jones is an in-fighter, right? And he just did not give Sugar Ray Robinson the time of day, and he had the skills to be able to slip and slide those punches. Anyway, he would regain the world middleweight title from Bobo Olson in 1955 and become again the top middleweight in the world. He'd have a successful defense against Bobo Olson and lose to Gene Fullmer. So he wasn't the top middleweight in the world there. And then he would regain it from Gene Fullmer, the very next fight. And that would be the third time he had the middleweight title. He would lose it to Carmen Basilio and then regain it from Carmen Basilio. That would be the fourth and final time he would be world middleweight champion. He would beat Bob Young, have his first defense against Paul Pender, and lose in that first defense against Paul Pender, January 22nd, 1960, which, by the way, was at the age of 38 that he lost the world middleweight title to Paul Pender, and he would never regain it after that. Okay? Now, so he was at the top of his game until his 38th. During his 38th year, he would not be at the top of his game. By the way, as you can see, up and downs just like Muhammad Ali, right? So this guy, he became welterweight champion at the age of 25, and he would gain the championship, lose it, gain the championship, lose it, in championship status, be at the top, then kind of come down, be at the top, and then come down. So you can see here, when we look at Sugar Ray Robinson, in 1946, he's at the top of the game, at least his division. But by 1960, which is the last time he had the middleweight title, he was no longer at the top. He was number 5, and he slipped down until the end of his career, which he was at the age of 44, where he faced the top middleweight guy in, I believe, what is his name? His name was Joey Archer, I think. Yeah, Joey Archer. There you go. Right? Joey Archer, and Joey Archer beat him. That's how his career ended. Again, you will notice that this guy, he did not have a career that ended at the top of his game, even though I'm sure he wanted to get there, but it's kind of tough to finish a career on top. And on top of that, he could not, like Muhammad Ali, sustain his career, but he did some remarkable things. He was 4-time middleweight champion of the world and undefeated welterweight champion of the world. That's something really awesome. So take a pinch of salt with that. Notice again, the 38th year keeps popping up, right? So let's look at Floyd Mayweather Jr.'s career. Oh, by the way, Notice he's facing the number one guy, so that's why he's the number one, right? All right, let's move on to Floyd Mayweather Jr. So Floyd Mayweather Jr., he began his career back in 1996, and in 1996 he was the age of 19. Okay? Or was he 20? Was he 20 or 19? In 1996. How old was he? Yeah, he was 19. Okay. So he won his first title in 1998 against Gennaro Hernandez, who was the number one super featherweight in the world at the time. So that Floyd Mayweather Jr. was the number one super featherweight in the world at the time in the year 1998. Super featherweight is also known as junior lightweight. It's this division here, and you can see he was the number one junior lightweight. Okay, fine. So from there on in, he kept on fighting contenders, blah, 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 blah. Then, interestingly enough, he fought a pound-for-pound fighter that was higher than him, Diego Corrales, and he beat him. That's a notable name. He moved up to lightweight. He faced the number one lightweight in the world, Jose Luis Castillo, because we have to say number one lightweight in the world instead of just lineal champion, because now the belts are all over the place, right? So he faces Jose Luis Castillo anyway, the number one lightweight in the world, and he defeats him. So he's now the number one, and he stays at the top of the game in lightweight for a couple years. I think it's 2 years before moving on to super lightweight. And in super lightweight, he does not face the number one super lightweight in the world. This is the only exception to the rule in his career. He faces Arturo Gatti, who is the number two super lightweight in the world. The number one was Costa Tszyu. He was trying to get Costa Tszyu. Costa Tszyu decided to fight Ricky Hatton instead. All right, he would move up in weight after that because he couldn't get the number one guy. And he faced Shambe Mitchell in welterweight. Then he faced Zab Judah. And Zab Judah that same year, I think the year before, he was the undisputed. So he was the number one welterweight in the world. But Carlos Manuel Baldomir beat him, so it didn't really matter. Floyd was facing, I don't know what Zab Judah was at the time. So he faces Carlos Baldomir, who is the number one welterweight in the world. He faced him, and he beat him. He goes up to super welterweight, but at super welterweight, he does not face the number one super welterweight in the world. He faces Oscar De La Hoya, so we just don't bother with that. The next time he goes up, so he faces Shane Mosley. Even though it wasn't for a title, Shane Mosley was considered the lineal champion because he beat Antonio Margarito. He was he was not the number one welterweight in the world at the time, but he should have been. I'm sorry. Yes, he was the number one. What should I be saying? He was the number one welterweight in the world, but he wasn't the number one pound-for-pound fighter in the world. That's what I'm going to say. And then he would go on to face Miguel Cotto, who was the number one super welterweight in the world at the time when he fought him. Then he'd face Saul Canelo Alvarez, who was the number one super welterweight in the world, again, because he gave up his title, even though he was the lineal champion. He's the number one contender. And then he faced, well, that's about it. He was the number one welterweight in the world until he retired against against Andre Berto. Did I say Adrian Broner? That's crazy. Andre Berto. And at the time, in his last defense of the welterweight titles that he had, when he faced Andre Berto, he was 38 years of age. Alright? He didn't quite hit 39. 2016, he's 39. Now, why I say this 38 years of age is because it's very important to understand during this duration of time, if you pay attention to what you see, Floyd is born in February. So, from February to September, if I'm not mistaken, is 7 months. Okay? It's 7 months. Now, I want to show you something. So anyway, he retired. Let me just get to this. When he retired, he was the number one junior middleweight in the world, and he was the number one welterweight in the world. So he finished his career always at the top of every division he was in, except for super lightweight, which he moved out of because the top guy didn't want to fight him. So what I'm saying is nobody else did that. Even if they were in heavyweight only, or they were in middleweight only, or whatever, none of these other two fighters that we have here did something like that. And what's very interesting is at the age of 38, this gentleman here and this gentleman here lost their fight. But I want to show you something. because there's something else I want to show you that's very important. So let me see if I can show you. So we said 7 months passed when Floyd turned 38, and in the process he fought 2 fights. His second fight was 7 months away. Sugar Ray Robinson. I'll show you something because it's very interesting. With Sugar Ray Robinson, yes, Sugar Ray Robinson, if I'm not mistaken, was born in May. So May is the 5th. 7 months after he faced Bobby Young. Okay, so that's not bad. And then 8 months after, 8 months after he faced Paul Pender, and he lost. Right, that's when he lost his title. So 8 months after, he was still 38 years of age. He lost his title. All right. Let me show you something else. Let me show you what Muhammad Ali was going on. Muhammad Ali. Maybe Muhammad Ali. Born January the whatever. Now his last loss was in October. He was born January. So 9 months later, or a little less than 9 months, maybe 8 months later, just like Sugar Ray Robinson, he lost to Larry Holmes, right? So if 3 months later, he would have been 39. Okay? I'm trying to put this in perspective here for you guys to see. 5 months later, Floyd would have been 39. And with Sugar Ray Robinson, it would have been, because I think he was May. When was Sugar Ray Robinson born? He was born May, right. So with Sugar Ray Robinson, it would have been, see, sometimes you got to figure out what you're doing. With Sugar Ray Robinson, Paul Pender was the guy, right? January. Okay. So as you can see here, Sugar Ray Robinson would have been 4 months later, he would have been 39. So if you look at it, 4 months, 5 months, and 3 months, it's around about the same thing. And what's interesting to me is that when you look at all 3 fighters, basically they were at the top of their game in their 38th year, and 2 of the 3 fell from that, but this one stayed standing. And the interesting thing about this one is that this one never really departed from the top position. These guys departed from the top position at some point or the other. With this gentleman here, the basically unknown guy Randy Turpin took him down. With this guy, an unknown guy named Leon Spinks took him down with very little experience. Okay? And it just, I'm not saying that they're not great fighters, but I'm just saying if you're going to be the best ever, you can't let that level of competition, inexperienced competition, take you down. I can understand, even Ken Norton wasn't well known at the time, and he had a tough fight with Ken Norton. Not to mention, though, that the same guy I think that was coaching Ken Norton was coaching Leon Spinks, but that's another story for another day. They found a flaw in Ali's defense. With this gentleman, Randy Turpin was kind of ranked at the time, but still, a guy like Randy Turpin taking you out, it's kind of sad, you know. And then later on in his career, Basilio and Fulmer, they're good fighters because, you know, they had a track record. Paul Pender? How did he lose to Paul Pender? You know, I'm just saying. But, you know, it happens. It happens. It just didn't happen to this guy. This guy never took any opponent for granted. But these guys took opponents for granted. Now, that's mindset. In terms of boxing skills, I mean, nobody's going to argue with me that this guy had better boxing skills or this guy had better all-around boxing skills than this guy. Okay, this guy had better defense than both of them, that's for sure. And defense plays a big role in anything. any sport. If you're, if you really want to do well, first thing you need to do is make sure your opponent doesn't score on you. And then the second thing you want to do is mount your offense to win. The Chicago Bulls, were known for their defense. The Boston Celtics were known for their defense. I'm talking basketball right now, folks, just in case you don't know. When you're talking about certain football leagues and football teams, they're known for their defense. And off of their defense comes their offense, right? So you have to be to be the best ever. I think, it's my opinion, I don't know, I may be wrong. You need to be a very good defensive fighter. And the best defensive fighter in all three of these is arguably, it's not even up for debate. It's this guy, right? So that's probably the reason why he was able to go through his entire career at the top of his game, at the top of his divisions, at the top of the sport of boxing. Not only did this guy leave the sport of boxing at the top, where he had built up himself to be, but on top of that, he was top of two divisions. Not one, but two divisions. Okay, with Muhammad Ali, you can't have two divisions unless he wants to go down to cruiserweight or something. I don't think he can do that. But he was undisputed heavyweight champion until I think it was Leon Spinks. Okay. My point anyway is this: when you look at this guy, he's so much higher than these two guys in terms of boxing. I'm not talking about in terms of anything else. All right. Now you can say this guy, if he was to hit you, you go down. I wouldn't disagree with you, even though I think it's a little bit overrated in the sense that I think when he fought higher level competition, he wasn't knocking them out, easily. He didn't knock out Ralph Tiger Jones, who knew what he was doing in there. I sure as hell know he wouldn't have knocked out Charlie Birdie. He never knocked out Kid Gavilan. And Kid Gavilan was a good fighter. He was a good Cuban fighter, but he ain't nowhere in the class of Black Chocolate. You're talking about Cuban fighters, and I'm not talking about Peter Quillen. I'm talking about Black Chocolate, the real Black Chocolate. Black Chocolate was the shit. You know what I mean? I don't disrespect anybody, but So when you're talking about, it's like talking about Guillermo Rigondeaux and Erislandy Lara, and Erislandy Lara is a better boxer than Guillermo Rigondeaux. Hell no. It's like saying Lorenzo Aragon is a worse boxer than Erislandy Lara. Like, don't be stupid. Guillermo Rigondeaux not only beat these guys, but he taught them. Lorenzo Aragon not only beat these guys, but he taught them boxing. Okay? You don't take Lorenzo Aragon. Unfortunately, he never defected to the U.S. Otherwise, he would have been a big name over here. But Guillermo Rigondeaux did. You know what I mean? And Guillermo Rigondeaux is a not even a featherweight. He's a super bantamweight. He's really a bantamweight. And this guy can handle middleweights. Okay? That's how good he is. He can box middleweights and beat them. You know what I mean? That's crazy. Like, you put Guillermo in there with GGG. He'll school his tail. I mean, he'll school that dude. You know what I'm saying? So, all I'm trying to tell you guys is this. That when you talk about boxers and you talk about times and eras, just remember something. Boxing as a sport evolves. If you think about conditioning, if you really pay attention to conditioning, this is very easy for me to do because it's very easy. I mean, I can prove who's the best conditioned athlete out of these three. I know who's the best conditioned athlete out of these three. You don't have to tell me. All right? I know who it is. Okay? Again, all you have to do is look at their entire careers. Don't just look at their peak of their careers, because if you look at the peak of their careers, then you're really not being fair. If you're talking about conditioning, you have to look at the entire career of the athlete. If you look at his entire career, was he well conditioned straight throughout? Remember, he had a fight with Joey Maxim. Right, conditioning was up to par, right? Now, he was a hell of an old school thing. He ran in boots, he trained, he has always stayed busy, always stayed in shape, he had to stay busy, fights and so on. But you can't say, I mean, this guy had 10 rounders most of his career. He had some championship 15 rounders, but most of his career was 10 rounders. Right? Well-conditioned athletes. Let's talk about that. Muhammad Ali, people say, oh yeah, this dude, he always bouncing for 15 rounds, bouncing in the ring. He's bouncing, shuffling, right? He's hardly taking a walk. Sometimes he stands in front of you, but he's doing a lot of things that, for a heavyweight, consumes a lot of energy. I would say I don't disagree with you on that. Absolutely. But to the span of his career now, he had some life and death battles with Joe Frazier. At the end of that fight, that 15 rounder, he was tired. There was another fight in which he didn't think he can go on, right? I'm not saying Joe Frazier didn't push him to his limit, but the point is, I never seen Floyd Mayweather break a sweat at the end of a fight. Have you ever seen that? 12 rounds, consistently, throughout his career. Most of his career was 12 rounders. Ali had more 15 rounders in his career, especially title fights. Sugar Ray Robinson had mostly 10 rounders, but more fights. These guys fought more often, right? So at the end of the day, the best conditioned athlete at the age of 38 has to be this dude. That's obvious because he was at the top of the sport at the end of his career, right? He never lost. He never looked like he was ever tired in any fight. We can't say that for Muhammad Ali. We cannot say that for Sugar Ray Robinson, which speaks to their conditioning. So you got to be conditioned. Sugar Ray Leonard would emphasize on conditioning. And one thing you can say about Sugar Ray Leonard was he was a well-conditioned athlete. Yeah, he got knocked out against Hector Camacho in 1997. Way past the time. He got knocked out, but he got knocked out. You know what I'm saying? Yeah, you still have to have a certain degree of conditioning, but if you get hit on the chin flush like that, you're going to get knocked out, okay? So it wasn't necessarily his conditioning. When you look even at his fight with Terry Norris, this guy made it to the end. He wasn't as sharp as he usually would be, but he made it to the end, right? Sugar Ray Leonard was always well conditioned. Sugar Ray Leonard took conditioning to another level, all right? Sugar Ray Leonard. Now you have Floyd Mayweather's era where the conditioning was ridiculous as well. Roy Jones Jr. and so on. These guys trained in some really ridiculous things, went to really extreme lengths, okay? And now in this present era we're in boxing, you can't just knock out a guy, or a punch is not just going to drop a guy. You know, when Sugar Ray Robinson hit a guy with a liver shot or spleen shot, they would have dropped, right? In this era, liver and spleen shots ain't dropping a guy. You ain't going to drop Robert Guerrero with a liver and spleen shot just like that. Besides the skill and technique of angling themselves, you know, these guys are bigger, stronger, faster. Just recently, we watched a Jamal Charlo knockout J-Rock, right? Just knocked J-Rock Williams completely out, right? J-Rock Williams was not on the level of conditioning, clearly, as Jamal Charlo. Not only did Jamal Charlo do that so sharp and quick, he looked sharper than Floyd doing it. That's because it's a different era. The conditioning of athletes, and athletes are using better nutrition. Whereas Sugar Ray Robinson used to smoke, Muhammad Ali didn't. Floyd Mayweather took it to another level. He didn't smoke, he didn't drink, right? You know, this homeboy, you know, he had a health and health and conditioning coach. Now guys have health and conditioning coaches and so on, right? Their punch resistance is higher. They're stronger, faster, much more athletic, much more streamlined and scientific towards their needs as boxers. And this is just saying that they've gotten sharper. When you look at Muhammad Ali, I mean, the guys in with Muhammad Ali's time went 15 rounds. People say, oh, they went 15 rounds back in the day. Now they don't go 15 rounds. Yeah, but they don't clinch as much. They have more action now. They don't clinch as much. People talk about holding. Go watch a Muhammad Ali fight back in the day. Go watch a Sugar Ray Robinson fight back in the day. You'll see how many clinches those homeboys did. They really clinched a lot, okay? And that's just the nature of boxing back then. If you go to the throwback days where they had 20 rounds, sometimes unlimited rounds, somebody got knocked out exhausted. Guess what? Guys were doing wrestling for most of the fight. So yeah, 20 rounds, but it wasn't a whole bunch of action. It was like punch, clinch. I'm talking one punch, clinch. Go watch a fight with go watch any throwback fight. Real throwback fight. I'm not talking about like the featherweights and stuff. Right? Willie Pep used to move around quite a lot. But I'm talking about the bigger weight classes, the middleweights, the welterweights, you know, those guys and upwards. You would see A lot of holding and clinching. Because that's how old school boxing was. In fact, you wouldn't see a whole bunch of combinations because people trying to get the better of each other, getting each other tired out before they run them combinations, because that's how old school boxing is. Floyd's of that old school boxing era in that respect. He's not just going to beat you up. He's going to crash you when he knows you're tired enough and you're slowing and you're not as sharp. Then he'll beat you up. That's what Muhammad Ali did too. Except for people who he knew he was just so much that better. He tested them out, realized, oh, they're nothing. And then he just crashed them, right? You hear Roy Jones Jr. say it. They check you out. As soon as you slow down a little bit, they crash you. That's how they take you out the game, all right? Anyways, so I just wanted to tell you guys, you can see, therefore, the guy who was at the top of boxing was this dude, okay? For his entire career, he was at the top of his divisions, okay? None of these guys did that in their entire career. This guy easily, by default, is the best ever. That's just the way how it goes. It's very simple. Alright? So that should end that TBE talk. And don't tell me about level of opposition, because this guy fought tougher opposition than these two put together at the end of his career. In fact, prevailed over them. Alright? You guys have a great one.